Mom, please don't make this harder than it already is. Get out! Those 10 words shattered 40 years of unconditional love. This is the story of how a mother who sacrificed everything discovered she had become invisible to the children she raised. It's about what happens when your family decides you're no longer worth the effort. And it's about the unexpected twist that changed everything. My name is Helen Morrison. I'm 69 years old, and I'm about to tell you how New Year's Eve became the night I realized I meant nothing to my own children. It was 11:47 p.m. on New Year's Eve when I sat completely alone for the first time in 40 years. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. I couldn't stop asking myself, how did I become so invisible to my own children? 3 days earlier, I called my daughter Sarah, excited. Honey, what time should I arrive on New Year's Eve? Should I bring my famous apple pie? There was a long, uncomfortable pause. Mom, about that. Michael's parents are coming this year, and his brother's family too. The house is going to be packed. There's just no space. No space. Those words hit like a punch to the stomach. I tried to laugh it off. I don't take up much room. I can sleep on the couch or help in the kitchen. She sighed. Mom, please don't make this harder than it already is. We'll see you next weekend, okay? My hands were shaking. I told myself she was just stressed. So I called my son, David. When I called, his wife Amanda answered. Oh, Helen, she said, using my first name like I was some distant acquaintance. We're doing a small thing this year. Just us and Amanda's sister's family. Very intimate. Intimate. Another word for, you're not invited. I asked to speak to David. Amanda said he was at the gym. I knew he was home. I could hear the TV in the background. But before I continue, check if you're already subscribed to the channel and leave your like. And tell me in the comments, where in the world are you listening to my story from? I really want to know how far it has reached. So there I was, alone on New Year's Eve for the first time since 1985. The last time was before I met my late husband, Robert. He died 4 years ago from a sudden heart attack. One moment laughing at the television, the next moment gone. The doctors said he didn't feel pain, but I felt enough for both of us. After Robert died, my children were supportive. At first, they called daily, visited every weekend, but the calls became less frequent. The visits spread further apart. Suddenly, I was always the one reaching out, trying to stay connected to the family I had given everything to create. I spent 37 years as a dedicated mother and wife. I gave up my teaching career when Sarah was born. I was there for every scraped knee, every school play, every heartbreak. When Robert started his construction company, I managed the books, answered phones, did payroll, all while raising 2 children. And I showed up even after they moved away. When Sarah suffered postpartum depression, who flew across the country to help for 3 months? Me. When David's business failed, who gave him $20,000 from my retirement savings? Me. I never asked for it back. So when both children said there was no space, it felt like betrayal. 40 years of sacrifice meant nothing. I knew Michael's parents' house was huge, 5 bedrooms, a finished basement, a guest house. This wasn't about physical space. I was no longer a priority. I had become an obligation, a burden. My sister was on a cruise. My best friend was in California. Everyone had plans. Everyone except me. I sat alone in the living room where we'd hosted countless celebrations. The walls covered with family photos, Sarah's wedding, David's graduation, my grandchildren, everyone smiling together. Now I looked at them alone, evidence of a life that no longer existed. At midnight, the crowd on TV erupted in celebration. I sat in silence. No champagne, no kiss like Robert and I used to share, no calls from my children. Nothing. I went to bed at 12:15 a.m., crying the kind of deep, painful crying that leaves you exhausted. I felt invisible, forgotten, discarded. The next morning, I woke with swollen eyes and a headache. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the gray winter morning, trying to accept this new reality where I was no longer essential to my children's lives. Then someone knocked. 3 firm knocks. I wasn't expecting anyone. I shuffled to the door and saw a man in a dark suit holding a briefcase. A salesman on New Year's Day? I opened the door. Mrs. Helen Morrison? I nodded. My name is James Crawford. I'm an attorney. May I come in? I have something very important to discuss regarding your late husband's estate. My heart skipped. Robert's estate was settled 4 years ago. What could this be about? He pulled out a business card. I understand this is unexpected, but your husband left specific instructions to be executed under certain circumstances. Those circumstances have now occurred. I let him in. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a manila envelope with my name in Robert's handwriting. My breath caught. 4 years ago, your husband created a conditional trust. He gave me specific instructions about when to deliver this. He made me promise to personally hand you this envelope on January 1st of the year you spent New Year's Eve completely alone. How could Robert know I'd be alone? He couldn't have predicted this. Mr. Crawford's expression softened. Your husband was very perceptive. He said, and I quote, "My kids love their mother, but they're weak. They'll get busy with their own lives and forget what she sacrificed. I need to make sure Helen knows her worth, even if I'm not there to remind her." Tears streamed down my face. That was Robert, always protecting me, even from beyond the grave. "What's in the envelope?" I whispered. "I don't know, but there's more. The trust he created is substantial, and it comes with conditions that will change everything." My hands were shaking as I reached for the envelope. The paper was thick, the kind Robert would have chosen for something important. The seal was still intact after 4 years. I looked up at Mr. Crawford, who watched me with quiet sympathy. I broke the seal and pulled out several pages in Robert's handwriting. The sight of it nearly broke me. I could almost hear his voice as I read the first line. "My dearest Helen, if you're reading this, it means I was right. And God, I hope I was wrong." He wrote, "I'm writing this on June 15th, 2021. You're in the kitchen making dinner, humming that song you always hum when you think nobody's listening. I'm supposed to be doing paperwork, but I'm watching you and thinking how lucky I've been. But I'm also worried about what will happen to you after I'm gone." I remembered that day. He'd been quieter than usual at dinner, said he was just tired, kissed my forehead, told me he loved me. I never knew he had gone to see a lawyer. The letter continued. Robert said he loved our children, but he knew them. David was a good man, easily influenced by Amanda, who had never liked me. Sarah was loving, but overwhelmed, stretched thin between work and kids. As their lives grew fuller, he knew they would drift away, not because they were monsters, but because people take for granted what has always been there. I had to stop reading. Robert had seen it all coming years before it actually happened. I read on. "So I've set up a trust, Helen. It's separate from everything you already have. I've been putting money aside for years from investments and side projects. I once thought I'd surprise you with a trip to Paris, but now I'm using it for something else. Trust me like you always have." My heart pounded. "How much money are we talking about?" I asked. "The trust is currently valued at approximately $1.8 million, Mr. Crawford said. I nearly dropped the letter. Robert had started it 20 years ago with $50,000 and never touched it. We had lived modestly, driven old cars, taken simple vacations. I had even given David $20,000 from our retirement, never knowing Robert had nearly $2 million set aside. "Why didn't he tell me?" I whispered. "Keep reading," Mr. Crawford said. Robert explained, "If I had known, I would have insisted on giving the money to the kids, for David's business, for the grandchildren's college. That's who you are, Helen. You give everything to everyone else and keep nothing for yourself. But this money isn't for them. It's for you, and it comes with conditions. The trust would only be released if I had spent a major holiday completely alone, excluded by our children. I had to use the money to prioritize my own happiness, not theirs. And I had to make a choice." Mr. Crawford pulled out another document. Robert had created something he called the Family Accountability Protocol. The money could be distributed in 2 ways. Option 1, I take the entire $8 million, invest it in my own future, and my children receive nothing from any inheritance. Option 2. I take half, $900,000, and the other half is split between Sarah and David, but only if they meet specific conditions. They would each have to spend 1 full weekend per month with me for a year, call me at least twice a week, include me in all major holidays, write me a handwritten letter acknowledging what I meant to them, and publicly apologize in front of their families for excluding me on New Year's Eve. If they refused or failed, they would receive nothing and the full amount would revert to me. If they completed everything, they would each receive $450,000 and I would keep my half. And if I choose option 1, if I just take all the money, I asked, then they get nothing and you're free to live your life however you choose, he replied. I looked back at the last paragraph of Robert's letter. He wrote that I deserved to be valued and to have a real choice. For 40 years, I had put everyone else first. Now it was my turn. Whether I chose to give them a chance or to take everything and start over, he said he admired me, and that I had been the best thing that ever happened to him. I was sobbing, deep, painful sobs that shook my whole body. When I could finally breathe again, I asked, "What happens now?" "Now, you have 72 hours to decide," Mr. Crawford said. "If you choose option 2, I'll inform your children of the requirements. If you choose option 1, the money will be transferred to an account in your name and your will be updated. 72 hours to decide whether to give my children a chance to prove they loved me or to walk away. In your professional opinion, what would you do?" I asked. He thought carefully. He had seen families torn apart by money and healed by love. Robert's trust was unusual, but not cruel, more like accountability. He told me to choose what I truly wanted, not what I felt obligated to do. After he left, I sat alone with Robert's letter and read it again and again, hearing his voice in every line. He had known exactly what would happen and had still found a way to protect me. Now it was my turn to choose. Do I give Sarah and David a chance to fight for me, or do I finally put myself first? I thought about calling them, but stopped. They hadn't called me on New Year's. Not a message, not a Happy New Year, Mom. Something shifted inside me. A seed Robert had planted. Anger, yes, but also self-respect. A feeling I hadn't allowed myself in years. The realization that maybe, just maybe, I deserved better. I spent the rest of January 1st in a fog, drifting from room to room like a ghost in my own life. Robert's letter stayed on the kitchen table, proof the morning hadn't been a dream. Every time I passed it, I felt a mix of love for him and anger at myself for not seeing what he had seen so clearly. The 72-hour deadline was ticking. I had until January 4th at 5 p.m. to give Mr. Crawford my answer. Before deciding, I needed to understand how I had gotten here, how I'd missed the signs that my children were pulling away. I made tea, sat with a notebook, and started listing memories I had once brushed aside. The signs had been there for years. I had just refused to see them. It started small, a couple of years after Robert died. In March 2022, I called Sarah a week before her birthday to ask what time I should come over with her favorite carrot cake. She said, "We're not doing anything this year. Michael's taking me to a spa weekend." I baked the cake anyway, drove 2 hours, and left it on her doorstep. 3 days later, she sent a text. "Thanks for the cake, Mom. No call. No, I miss you." Then there was David's promotion that July. He called to say he'd been made regional manager. I asked when we could celebrate. "Amanda's planning something with her parents and some people from work. You'd be bored," he said. Later, on Facebook, I saw it wasn't a networking event. It was a family party. Amanda's relatives, his co-workers, their spouses, everyone celebrating my son. Everyone except me. Thanksgiving 2022, Sarah hosted. When I asked where Michael's parents were, she said, "They celebrated yesterday. We did 2 separate Thanksgivings. They got the real holiday. I got the second day, the leftover celebration. Christmas 2023 was worse. I arrived at David's house on Christmas morning with gifts. Amanda met me at the door. "We're opening presents with my family right now. Can you come back around 3? I sat in my car crying, then ate breakfast alone at a diner. When I returned, the magic was over, the presents already opened. Amanda's mother was in the good chair by the fireplace. She'd had the real Christmas. I got the scraps. I kept writing, filling pages. Mother's Day 2023, flowers with a generic card, a 4-minute late-night call. My 68th birthday. No one could make dinner. No one suggested another day. I ate alone at a restaurant while other families celebrated around me. The worst memory was from April 2024. Margaret invited me to her daughter's wedding. I asked Sarah to come with me, just the two of us. She said Emma had a soccer tournament. When the tournament was canceled, I called, hopeful. "So you can come with me after all." Silence. Then, we already made other plans. We're taking the kids to the beach. We really need some family time. I went to the wedding alone. Now, with years of proof laid out in front of me, I felt foolish. Robert had seen it long ago. Once on the porch at sunset, he said, "The kids are pulling away. You feel it, don't you? Promise me you'll never let anyone make you feel invisible. Not even our children." I had promised, and then I broke that promise. On January 2nd, still no call from Sarah or David. They had no idea a lawyer had arrived with a life-changing envelope, no idea their father had predicted their neglect. Part of me wanted to call and unload everything. Another part wanted to wait to see how long it would take them to remember I existed. January 3rd. Still nothing. Sarah posted New Year's Eve photos. Everyone smiling, complete, as if nothing and no one was missing. David posted a picture of Amanda and the kids raising glasses. The caption read, "Starting 2026 with my whole world." I looked at Robert's letter again, at the lines where he gave me permission to choose myself. For the first time in years, I felt more than sadness or guilt. I felt anger. Righteous, clear anger. My children had taken me for granted because I had allowed it, always accepting being treated as optional. Robert knew the only way I would stand up for myself was if he forced me to choose. At 7 p.m. on January 3rd, with 22 hours left, I knew I needed one final test. I picked up my phone and sent the same message to both of them. "Hi, sweetheart. Hope you had a wonderful New Year's. I've been thinking about you. Would love to hear your voice when you have a moment." I waited. 1 hour. 2. 3. At 11 p.m., my phone buzzed. Sarah. "Hey, Mom, crazy day. Talk soon. Promise." No call. Just a vague promise I knew would fade. David didn't respond at all. And in that moment, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Robert's letter on the nightstand, my phone in my hand, waiting for a call that never came. At 3 a.m., I got up and walked into the spare bedroom, the one that used to be David's. His trophies were still on the shelf, his old band poster still curling on the wall. I sat on the bed where I used to read him stories and calm his nightmares. I remembered one night when he was 14 shouting, "I didn't ask to be born." I had said quietly, "You're right. You didn't ask to be born, but I chose to have you. I chose to love you. And I'll keep choosing you even when you don't choose me back." Back then, he cried and hugged me. Now, sitting in that same room 21 years later, I realized a part of him had always seen me as an obligation. I opened his closet and found a shoebox of letters and cards, handmade birthday cards, lunchbox notes, a Mother's Day card that read, "My mom is the best because she loves me even when I'm bad." When had I gone from that mother to someone he couldn't make time for? In Sarah's old room, I found her memory box and a high school journal. One entry from 1999 cut deep. She wrote that I didn't understand her dreams, that she felt I wanted to keep her small so she'd always need me, and that she couldn't wait to get away. I remembered that fight about college. I'd worried about tuition and debt, not about controlling her. She'd still gone to the local university on a scholarship and apparently resented me anyway. Sitting on her floor, I wondered if their distance had started long before Robert died, if they'd been pulling away for years while I clung tighter, or if I was just inventing excuses for them again. January 4th. The day I had to decide. I woke up on Sarah's floor, checked my phone. Still nothing from David. One midnight text from Sarah. "Love you, Mom. Talk this weekend." A vague promise I knew meant a rushed call, if any. At the kitchen table, I reread Robert's words. Make sure it's what you truly want, not what you think you should do. What did I truly want? For my children to love me the way I loved them. But that fantasy had to die. They had built their own lives. I was the one still waiting by the phone, still baking, still pretending. I thought about the trust. 1 weekend a month, 2 calls a week, holidays together, a handwritten letter, a public apology. Was that too much, or the bare minimum any mother deserves? On impulse, I called Amanda. "He's at a work thing," she said. "Can I have him call you back?" "It's important," I answered. She hesitated. "Is everything okay? Are you sick or something?" "I'm fine. I just need to speak with him today." Her tone cooled. "We'll have him call you." "Amanda, can I ask you something? Do you not like me?" Silence, then careful words. "It wasn't about me doing anything wrong," she said. "They just had their own family now and liked to keep the circle small. In other words, I was outside the circle. When I asked if she'd pushed David not to invite me for New Year's, she dodged. Then she rushed off the phone. Hours later, at 2 p.m., David finally called. "New Year's was great," he said cheerfully. "How was yours?" "I spent it alone, David." "Well, sometimes it's nice to have a quiet night, right?" As if I had chosen solitude. I asked him directly why he hadn't wanted me there. He sighed, the same sigh Sarah used. He said it wasn't personal, that they wanted to keep it small, that the kids and Amanda's sister's kids get along so well. I pointed out that easier clearly meant without me. He insisted I was making it a big thing. "When's the last time you called me just to talk, without needing something?" I asked. He had no answer, only, "I've been really busy," and a complaint that he didn't have time for a guilt trip. So I stopped. "You'll be hearing from a lawyer soon," I said. Now he was alarmed. "Are you dying? What's going on?" "I'm not dying. Your father left something that involves you and your sister. Mr. James Crawford will be in touch." I hung up before he could respond. My heart pounded, but for once I felt strangely clear, strong. At 4:30 p.m., 30 minutes before the deadline, I called Mr. Crawford. "I've made my decision," I said. "Would you like to meet in person?" he asked. "No, I'll tell you now. I choose option 2. He paused. "You want to give them a chance to complete the requirements?" "Yes, not because they deserve it, but because I want to see if they're capable of it. I want them to face what they've done and what they almost threw away." He asked if there was anything specific I wanted him to say. I told him, "Let them know their father knew. Tell them he saw this coming, and tell them they have 1 year to prove him wrong." After I hung up, the house was silent. But for the first time in years, that silence didn't feel like defeat. It felt like power. For once, the sacrifice wasn't mine to make. It was theirs. I didn't hear from either of my children all weekend. Saturday and Sunday passed in silence. I had expected David to call back about the lawyer I mentioned, but nothing came. Even a hint of something legal wasn't enough to make him follow up. Monday morning, I woke with a mix of anticipation and dread. At some point that day, my children would learn about their father's trust, the requirements, and the choice I had made. I tried to distract myself, cleaning a house that was already clean, organizing closets, cooking soup I didn't want. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped, for spam, appointment reminders, and a call from Margaret inviting me to book club. By early evening, I began to think nothing had happened yet. Then, at 6:03 p.m., my phone exploded. David called first. I let it ring 4 times before answering. "What the hell is this, Mom?" he snapped. No greeting, only anger. He ranted about the trust and called it a sick game, accusing me of being manipulative and cruel over New Year's. I told him the truth. I hadn't created the rules. His father had, years before, because he knew they would get so wrapped up in their own lives that they'd forget me. When David protested that they were just busy, I reminded him that if he truly loved and prioritized me, the requirements, 1 weekend a month, 2 calls a week, including me and holidays, should be easy. He insisted it was about control from beyond the grave. I pointed out what real manipulation looked like, claiming there was no space for me, letting his wife come between us, pretending he was too busy when he simply couldn't be bothered. When he claimed Amanda hadn't turned him against me, I asked when he'd last made a decision about our relationship without her influence. He had no answer. I told him he had a choice: meet the requirements and receive his inheritance, or walk away with nothing. If he refused, he'd prove Robert right, and prove to himself that money meant more to him than his mother. After a long silence, he said he needed to think and hung up without saying goodbye. 3 minutes later, Sarah called, already crying. "Mom, I just talked to a lawyer. Is this real?" she asked, her voice small. When I confirmed it, she wanted to know why her father would do this. I told her, because he loved me and knew I'd need protection, even from my own children. She insisted they hadn't been that bad. But I reminded her she had told me there was no space for me on New Year's Eve. She tried to justify it with a crowded house and Michael's family, but I asked the only question that mattered. Had she even considered how I would spend that night? Had she called to check? She hadn't. Her apology came quickly. I didn't think, and I answered simply. That was exactly the problem. She hadn't thought of me at all. When she asked about the requirements, I laid them out. She called them a lot, listing her job, kids, husband, house. I pointed out she always found time for Michael's family, her friends, the gym, book club, and her children's activities. The issue wasn't time, it was willingness. Eventually, she said, "I'll do it, all of it." Part of me softened, but I stayed firm. A lawyer would send formal documents, and both she and David had 12 months to complete everything. If either failed, both would lose their inheritance. She panicked at that. I can't control what David does, but I told her she could encourage him, support him, hold him accountable. That's what family does. Her next concern betrayed her priorities. This is $450,000 we're talking about. He can't just walk away from that. Not from you, but from that. After we hung up, I sat in the darkening living room, emotionally drained. 2 different reactions: David, angry and defiant; Sarah, frightened and compliant. But neither had said what I needed most: to be seen, heard, and genuinely apologized to. In the days that followed, David called again, calmer but still resistant. He said Amanda believed the arrangement was toxic and that he shouldn't participate. I told him that refusing would give her exactly what she wanted: me entirely gone from his life. When I asked when she had last encouraged him to visit or call me, he had no answer. I reminded him that his father had seen this coming and had built consequences for letting me be erased. David said he needed more time. I reminded him that every day he waited was another day he chose Amanda's comfort over his mother's heart. Sarah texted, asking to meet for lunch. At the cafe, she looked exhausted and hugged me longer than usual. She confessed that without the money on the line, she probably would have kept doing exactly what she'd been doing, calling every few weeks, seeing me every few months, fitting me in only when convenient. It hurt deeply, but at least it was honest. I told her that didn't make her a monster, just human, and it proved how wise her father had been to understand that people rarely change without real incentive. As we left, she squeezed my hand and said, "I know this started because of the money, but I want to use this year to really reconnect with you, not just because I have to." It wasn't everything, but it was something. That night, alone in my house, I read Robert's final words again. I deserved to be valued, prioritized, and given a choice. I had made mine. Now my children had to make theirs. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for certain. I was no longer invisible. 2 weeks into January, David finally made his decision. He called on a Friday night at 9 p.m. while I was in bed pretending to read. "I'll do it," he said. "The requirements, I'll do them." My heart pounded. "Why?" "Because it's $450,000, Mom. That's life-changing money. So he was doing it for the money. When I said that, he accused me of using Dad's money to manipulate them. I told him this was about what Robert wanted, for them to understand they were losing me, not just an inheritance. He insisted the end result was the same. He'd visit, call, follow the checklist. I reminded him it wasn't a checklist, it was a relationship. His tone stayed flat and resentful. When I suggested that if he was going to show up angry, maybe he shouldn't do it at all, he snapped, "You want the money or not?" I reminded him the money was already mine. This was about whether he could show up for his mother without being forced. He couldn't understand what more I wanted. Everything, I thought. We settled on the first weekend of February. After he hung up, I cried, not from relief, but grief, realizing that even if he completed every requirement, it might always feel transactional. Sarah, meanwhile, surprised me. She called the next morning. "Instead of waiting for the end of January, can I come today? Just me. Michael will watch the kids. I want real one-on-one time." "You want to come today?" I asked, stunned. "Yes. I've been thinking about what you said. I hated knowing I wouldn't be making time for you if it wasn't required. So I want to start now. Not because I have to, but because I want to." She arrived at 2 p.m. with an overnight bag and flowers. When I opened the door, she hugged me and burst into tears. "I'm so sorry, Mom, for everything." We cooked together that evening, making Robert's favorite lasagna. We drank wine and truly talked for the first time in years. She asked about New Year's, and I told her how I sat alone, watched the ball drop, cried myself to sleep, and woke up feeling invisible. "I didn't know," she sobbed. "I thought you'd be with David or friends." "But you didn't ask," I said. "You assumed someone else would take care of me. No one did." "I made you convenient," she admitted. She'd convinced herself I liked being independent, so she wouldn't feel guilty leaving me out. Sunday we went to church together, then brunch at my favorite cafe from her childhood. At the table, she reached for my hand. "The letter Dad wanted us to write. Can I write it now? Not because I have to, but because I'm ready." "Yes, sweetheart," I said, crying. "Whenever you're ready." That afternoon, she sat at my kitchen table for an hour, writing through tears. Before leaving, she handed me the folded letter. "Don't read it until I'm gone. I can't watch." After she drove away, I opened it. In messy, emotional handwriting, she poured out memories. The bike accident, where I carried her barefoot to the hospital and stayed all night. The teenage heartbreak where I sat outside her bedroom door for days, then watched movies and ate cookies without telling her to get over it. The 2 a.m. panic about marrying Michael when I drove 2 hours just to listen. She listed all the ways I'd shown up and how slowly she had stopped showing up for me. She admitted she had let calls slip, visits shorten, other priorities take over. She confessed she'd lied to herself, telling a story that I preferred being alone so she could avoid facing her own selfishness. She owned the New Year's lie. There had been space. She'd simply chosen Michael's demanding, vocal mother over her quiet, accommodating one. She wrote that she was so sorry, that she couldn't undo leaving me alone on New Year's Eve, but she could choose differently from now on. She promised to spend the rest of her life proving that I mattered, that I wasn't an obligation, that I was her mother and deserved better. I read it 3 times, sobbing. It was exactly what I'd needed. Not just apologies, but understanding. One child was showing up out of obligation. The other was showing up out of love. The first month of requirements made the contrast starker. Sarah called 3 times a week instead of 2 and sent daily photos of the grandchildren. She invited me to Emma's basketball game and saved a seat beside her, proudly introducing me to other parents. David did the bare minimum. 2 calls a week like clockwork, each about 15 minutes. He asked about my health, the weather, nothing deeper. I could almost hear him counting down. The first weekend of February, he arrived at 6 p.m. Friday, alone. "Where's your family?" I asked. "The requirements say I have to spend the weekend with you," he said. "They don't say anything about bringing my family." Technically true, emotionally devastating. Dinner was painfully awkward. I'd made his childhood favorite, pot roast. He ate like he was refueling, not visiting his mother. One-word answers to every question. No curiosity, no warmth. Saturday, I suggested the farmer's market, the museum, a movie. "Can I just hang out here? I'm tired," he said, settling on the couch with sports on his phone while I wandered the house pretending this was fine. By Sunday morning, I couldn't hold it in. "David, this isn't working." "I'm here, aren't I? I'm fulfilling the requirement." "You're physically here, but not really here. You're just waiting to leave." "What do you want from me, Mom?" "I'm doing what the trust requires." "I want you to want to be here," I said. "To talk to me like I'm your mother, not a stranger you're stuck with." "Maybe if you hadn't blackmailed us with Dad's money, this would feel different," he shot back. "This isn't blackmail, it's accountability. Your father gave you a chance to see what you were losing before it was too late." He fired back that I could have just taken the money and left them alone, as if I'd been the one intruding all these years. Something inside me broke. "Get out," I said quietly. "What?" "Get out of my house. If being here is such a burden, then leave." He tried to backpedal, but I stopped him. He grabbed his bag. "This still counts as my weekend, right? I stayed Saturday night. That's what it says." Even then, he was thinking like a man checking boxes. "Go home to Amanda," I said. "I'm sure she's thrilled you're leaving early." He left without goodbye. Later, Sarah called. David had already told her I'd kicked him out and was being unreasonable. I explained what had really happened. She listened quietly, then said, "Mom, Amanda is poisoning David against this. She's telling him you're manipulating him, that Dad's trust is abusive, that he should walk away from the money." I'd suspected it. Hearing it confirmed hurt in a different way. "What do I do?" I asked. "I don't know," she said softly. "But you need to understand, David might not make it. He might not complete the requirements, and if he doesn't, I don't get my inheritance either." "I know, and I need you to know. I'm okay with that." I was stunned. "What?" "If David walks away and we both lose the money, I'm okay with it, because what I've gotten with you this past month is worth more than $450,000. I've remembered who you are, who we were. I don't want to lose that again, money or no money." I started to cry. "Sarah, I mean it, Mom. I'm going to keep showing up and calling and including you, not because of Dad's trust, because you deserve it, because I love you." For the first time since New Year's Eve, I felt something like real hope. After we hung up, I sat alone in the dark, thinking about the year ahead. One child slowly finding his way back, maybe. One drifting further away. And me, finally learning that sometimes love means letting go of the child who won't choose you, so you can fully receive the one who does, even when it breaks your heart. February turned into March, and the distance between my children only grew clearer. Sarah kept exceeding every requirement, while David did the bare minimum. His calls stayed stiff and scripted. The second weekend visit was only slightly better because he brought his sons, Tyler and Mason, whose noise filled the silence between us. That Saturday, the boys ran straight to the backyard while David sat at the kitchen table, scrolling on his phone. I made coffee and tried small talk. "Is Amanda upset you're here again?" I asked. He finally looked up. "She's just protective. She doesn't like seeing me forced to do something against my will." "Is it against your will to spend time with your mother?" I asked. "When it's mandated by a dead man, yeah," he said. Before I could answer, Tyler burst in crying. "Grandma, Mason said you don't really want us here. He said Dad has to come or you won't give him money." My heart dropped. I called Mason in and gently asked why he'd said that. Arms crossed, he replied, "Because it's true. Mom said you're making Dad come because of Grandpa's will. She said you're being mean, and Dad doesn't really want to be here." Amanda had taken our private conflict and fed it to the children. I looked at David, waiting for him to correct it. He said nothing. "Mason," I said, "your dad is here because I love him and miss him. Your grandpa wanted our family to stay close, that's all. But Mom said—" "I don't care what your mother said," I cut in, voice firm. She doesn't get to change the truth to make herself feel better about keeping your father away from me. I sent the boys to the living room with games and turned back to David. We need to talk, I said. Really talk. Reluctantly, he put away his phone. When did you stop loving me? I asked. I never stopped loving you, he protested. Then when did I become a burden instead of a blessing? He hesitated, then went back to the day Robert died. How he'd dropped everything, stayed 2 weeks, handled the funeral and the estate. Then it was the furnace, then the car, then the roof. Every month, something, he said. Amanda kept a list. She said you're a grown woman. You could hire people. She said it wasn't healthy for me to drop everything every time you called. So she convinced you I was using you, I said quietly. She convinced me I needed boundaries, he replied. And maybe she was a little right. After Dad died, I did feel like a substitute husband. Every visit came with a list. Fix this, move that. It stopped feeling like visiting my mom and started feeling like a job. I swallowed hard. As painful as it was, I could see his point. You're right, I said. He looked genuinely surprised. After your father died, I was lost. I leaned on you too much. I'm sorry for that. I let the apology sit, then added, but that was years ago. I stopped asking you for help. I hired people. I built other support. And you still pulled away. Because it wasn't just about tasks. It was about Amanda wanting you all to herself. He bristled. That's not fair. Isn't it? When was the last time you defended me to her? I asked. He had no answer. I made mistakes after your father died, I admitted. But you chose to let her voice be louder than mine. You chose not to talk to me about it. We sat in heavy silence, the boys' laughter drifting in from the other room. I don't know how to fix this, he said finally, sounding more like the boy I'd raised than the angry man he'd become. Do you want to fix it? I asked. He looked up, and for a moment I saw my son again, hurt, confused, and very young. Part of me does, he said. Part of me is just angry at you, at Dad, at this whole setup. I'm not making you choose, David, I said. I'm asking you to show up. There's a difference. It doesn't feel different, he murmured. I reached for his hand. He let me take it. Your father wrote that you're weak, easily influenced, I said gently. I hated reading that. But he wasn't wrong, was he? Tears filled his eyes. No, he whispered. You're a good man, I said. But you let other people decide who you're allowed to love and how. If you don't learn to stand up for what you know is right, you won't just lose me. You'll lose yourself. He wiped his face. She's going to leave me if I keep doing this, he said. She's already threatened it. Then you have to decide what matters more, I said quietly. A marriage built on control, or a life where you know you didn't abandon your own mother. That's not a fair choice, he said. Life rarely offers fair choices, I answered. But there's still choices. Later, as he loaded the boys into the car, he turned back to me. I'm going to keep coming, he said. I'm going to finish the requirements, but I'm not just doing it for the money anymore. I need to figure out who I am without Amanda telling me. I hugged him, and this time he really hugged me back. That's all I've ever wanted, I whispered, for you to choose yourself. After they left, I called Sarah and told her what had happened. She listened, then sighed. Mom, there's something I should have told you, she said. A month ago, Amanda called me. She wanted me to talk you into canceling the requirements. Said you were being cruel and that we should team up against you. My stomach tightened. What did you say? I told her no, Sarah said. I told her that for the first time in years, I felt like I had my mother back and I wasn't going to give that up. She said I was betraying David. I told her she doesn't get to define our family. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed with pride and relief. She's not going to stop, Sarah warned. She's going to keep pushing David to quit. And honestly, she might succeed. I know, I said. But at least now David knows he has a choice. Before this, he didn't even see that. That night, with Robert's letter in my lap, one line glowed in my mind. Your children might surprise you, or they might disappoint you, but at least you'll know the truth. The truth was more complicated than I had ever imagined, and for the first time, I was finally strong enough to face it. March rolled into April, and the contrast between my children only grew. Sarah and I built routines that went far beyond any requirement, almost nightly calls, weekly lunches, and frequent visits with the grandchildren so they could know me as well as they knew Michael's parents. David still struggled, but I could see effort. His calls softened, his answers lengthened, and every now and then, during weekend visits, something would make him laugh, and just for a moment, it felt like having my son back. Amanda, however, was always there in the background. Through Sarah, I learned she was refusing to attend any family gathering if I was invited. When Sarah planned a big Easter dinner and insisted I be there, Amanda gave David an ultimatum. Either they all stayed home, or he went without her and the kids. He chose to come. When he got back that night, Amanda had packed a bag and gone to her sister's. That was 3 days ago. On April 18th, David sat in my living room, hollow-eyed. "She says she's done," he said. "If I keep doing the trust requirements, she's filing for divorce." My heart broke for him, but anger flared too. "Do you believe her?" I asked. "I do," he said. "She's serious." "What are you going to do?" He looked at me, desperate. "What would Dad do?" "Your father would say that a marriage where you must choose between your spouse and your family isn't a marriage," I answered. "It's a hostage situation." David said he loved Amanda and the kids and couldn't bear to lose them, but he was terrified of becoming the kind of man who abandons his mother just to keep his wife calm. We talked for hours about my marriage to Robert, about boundaries and non-negotiables, about how a partner should expand your life, not shrink it. He said he wasn't strong enough. I told him he was stronger than he believed. 2 days later, everything came to a head. Sarah called, panicked. "Amanda just showed up at my house. She wants to talk to both of us. Can you come?" I arrived to find Amanda on Sarah's couch, arms crossed, face hard. "I'm here to end this," she said. "I want you to release David from the trust requirements." "I can't," I replied. "Those conditions were your father-in-law's, not mine." She accused me of hiding behind a dead man, of dangling money so my children would perform like trained dogs. She called what I was doing manipulative and cruel, claiming I had destroyed her marriage. I told her David was making his own choices, and that real manipulation looked more like isolating a man from his family, poisoning his children against their grandmother, and then calling their mother toxic for wanting a relationship. "David is weak," she shouted. "He can't say no to you." "If he's weak," I said, "it's because someone has spent years teaching him to fear their disapproval more than he trusts his own judgment." The words hit her, and she lashed out, calling me needy and draining, insisting Robert set up the trust not to protect me, but to force the kids to deal with me. Sarah finally stepped in and told Amanda to stop. I stood and told Amanda the plain truth. She had come only to hurt me into letting David go, but I wouldn't disappear to soothe her fears. I was his mother. I deserved more than erasure. And then, beneath the rage, her real fear cracked open. "You don't understand," she said, voice shaking. "You had him for 18 years before I met him. No matter what I do, I'll never be enough. He loves you more than he loves me." For the first time, I saw the wounded girl inside the angry woman, the one who'd grown up fighting for scraps of love and attention. Amanda admitted she had never learned how to share, that every hour he spent with me felt like time stolen from her, that with her own chaotic childhood, she was desperate to keep her little world controlled and intact. "Amanda," I said gently, "a son's love for his mother and a husband's love for his wife aren't rivals. You should come first in his marriage. Your children should come first as his responsibility. But that doesn't mean I have to be nowhere." She said she didn't know how not to feel threatened, how not to see me as competition. I told her that was exactly what therapy was for, and that the real danger wasn't me, but forcing David to choose. "If you make him choose," I said quietly, "you may not like his answer." We talked for over an hour, all three of us. There were tears, raised voices, moments of silence where no one knew what to say. We discussed boundaries, expectations, and what healthy might actually look like. In the end, nothing was magically fixed, but something shifted. Amanda agreed to stop trying to sabotage the trust requirements. She agreed to seek counseling, and she agreed to attend at least one family dinner with me present, just to see if we could all occupy the same space without tearing each other apart. After she left, Sarah hugged me. "You could have destroyed her," she said, "but you didn't." "She's hurting," I replied. Hurt people, I can't hate her for that." That night, David called. "Amanda told me what happened," he said. "You said things to her I should have said years ago. You stood up to her without tearing her down." He told me they had agreed to try counseling and that he was going to keep following the requirements. "Not because I have to, but because I want to," he said. I told him the truth, too, that I never did this for the money. I did it because I missed him and wanted my son back. He admitted he should have seen all of this on his own, without needing a legal document to wake him up. But he saw it now, and that mattered. Later, alone in my room, I took out Robert's letter one more time. His words about the children surprising or disappointing me suddenly felt fully alive. Sarah had become not just a daughter again, but a companion, someone who called because she wanted to, who showed up because she chose to. David had begun the harder journey, confronting his own weakness, his tendency to let others define him, and slowly learning to stand on his own feet. I folded the letter and tucked it away. I didn't need to read it anymore, because I was living it. I had chosen myself, my worth, my right not to be invisible, and by doing so, I had forced my children to choose as well. They hadn't chosen perfectly. They stumbled, they hurt me, they hurt each other. But they were choosing consciously instead of drifting. The year ahead would still be messy. Amanda would backslide. David would waver. Sarah would have days when life crowded me out. But we were no longer pretending everything was fine while I vanished in the background. We were trying, together, even when it was painful. And maybe that, more than anything, is what family really is. The months that followed were not perfect. They were messy, complicated, and often painful. But they were real. May brought Mother's Day, the first in years where both my children showed up without being asked. Sarah hosted brunch, and David came with Amanda and the kids. It was awkward at times, the conversation stiff, but we were all there together. Amanda even brought me flowers and quietly said, "Happy Mother's Day, Helen." It wasn't much, but it was something. June and July brought slow, steady progress. Therapy was helping David and Amanda. On one call, David told me his therapist had asked him to describe me in 3 words. He chose loving, patient, forgotten, then cried, realizing the forgetting had been his fault, not mine. In August, Sarah and I took a weekend trip to the coast, just us. We stayed at a little bed and breakfast, talking and laughing for 2 days. She told me reconnecting with me had made her a better mother, that she finally understood what unconditional love really meant and wanted to give her children what I had given her. September tested us. David hit a wall, work stress, marriage tension, the weight of everything. He missed 2 calls in 1 week. I could have reminded him of the requirements, but instead I phoned him and simply asked, "Are you okay?" He broke down, admitting he was overwhelmed and exhausted. So I drove to his house, spent the weekend helping with the kids, cooking, and giving him and Amanda room to breathe. Not because I had to, but because he needed me. When I left, he hugged me and said, "Thank you for not giving up on me." I whispered back, "Never." In October, Sarah completed her official handwritten letter requirement, even though she had written one to me months before. This one was for her children, to be read when they were older. She read it to me first. It spoke about honoring parents not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. She wrote about my sacrifices and the lesson she'd learned from nearly losing me. We both cried. November brought the holidays back around. Thanksgiving was at my house. Everyone came, Sarah's family, David's family, even Amanda. She helped me baste the turkey and, in a quiet moment, said, "I'm glad David didn't give up on this, on you. I was wrong to try to keep you apart. As we sat around the table, I looked at my children, grandchildren, and the daughter-in-law who had fought me so fiercely but was now cautiously reaching toward peace. Robert's chair was empty, as it had been for 4 years. Yet I felt him there in the laughter and second chances. December marked a full year since that lonely New Year's Eve. On the 28th, exactly 1 year after telling me there was no space, Sarah called. "Mom, we're hosting New Year's again. You have the guest room. It's yours. There will always be space for you in my home and in my life. Always." I cried. An hour later, David called. "I know you're going to Sarah's, but I want you to know you're always welcome here too. Any holiday, any time. We want you to feel like you have 2 homes, not just one." On New Year's Eve, I went to Sarah's. The guest room was beautifully prepared. Fresh flowers, new towels, and a framed photo of Robert and me on the dresser. At midnight, we all stood together, Sarah holding one hand, David with an arm around my shoulders, grandchildren racing around with noisemakers, Amanda and Michael toasting with champagne. As the countdown began, I thought of the woman I had been a year before, alone, invisible, forgotten. I thought of Robert's letter, his trust, and his stubborn belief that I deserved more. I thought of my choice to stop accepting scraps and insist on being seen. "Happy New Year," echoed through the room. Sarah hugged me hard. "I love you, Mom. Thank you for not giving up on us." David kissed my cheek. "Thank you for fighting for our family." We stayed up talking and laughing until 2 a.m. When I finally lay down in the guest room that would always be mine, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. By December 31st, the trust requirements were officially complete. Both Sarah and David had done it all. The weekends, the calls, the letters, the apologies, the holidays. On January 15th, I sat in Mr. Crawford's office to finalize the trust distribution. "You should be very proud," he said. "They each receive $450,000, and you keep your $900,000. I signed, but the numbers felt almost incidental. It had never really been about the money. From there, I drove to the cemetery. Sitting by Robert's headstone, I told him, "You were right. About the kids, about Amanda, about me needing to choose myself. I was so angry when I first read your letter, but I understand now. I wouldn't have believed you without living it." I told him about Sarah, how we talked almost every day now, how I got to be her mother again, not an obligation. I told him about David, still working, still struggling, but stronger and no longer entirely defined by other people's expectations. "I miss you," I said, "but I'm not alone anymore. You made sure of that." Then I smiled through my tears. "Oh, and that $900,000? I'm using it just like you wanted. I booked Paris. I'm going in March, with Sarah. We're finally going to see everything we dreamed about. I'm choosing myself, like you asked." That night, back in my living room, the same room where I'd spent that awful New Year's Eve alone, my phone buzzed. A text from David. "Love you, Mom. Talk tomorrow." One from Sarah. "Can't wait for Paris. Already planning." Then a photo of my grandchildren holding a sign that read, "We love Grandma Helen." I looked around at the signs of a life rebuilt. New family photos, a child's drawing on the fridge, a book Sarah had lent me, a toolkit David had given me so he could teach me to handle small repairs myself. I was no longer invisible, no longer forgotten, no longer alone. For so long I had defined myself only by what I gave, the sacrifices, the late nights, the endless care. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that I deserved love in return, not just gratitude or obligation, but active, chosen love. Robert's trust didn't just hold my children accountable. It gave me permission to expect more, to set boundaries, to choose myself without apology. I thought of all the mothers and fathers sitting in quiet houses, telling themselves their children are just busy, swallowing the ache of being left out. I wished I could tell every one of them, "You are not asking too much to want to be included." Wanting to be a priority is not neediness. Holding people accountable for how they treat you is not cruelty. You deserve active love, phone calls, visits, a place at the table. You deserve to be more than an afterthought. And if the people in your life cannot or will not see that, then your task is not to shrink. It is to build a life so rich that their absence becomes their loss, not yours. At 11:47 p.m., the exact time I'd once sat alone, suffocated by silence, my phone rang. A group video call. Sarah and her family on one screen, David and his on another, all the grandchildren waving. "We wanted to say good night, Grandma," they shouted. I laughed, tears spilling down my cheeks. "Good night, my darlings. I love you all so much." When the call ended, the quiet that settled over the house was gentle, not crushing. The quiet of a day well lived, not a life half abandoned. My name is Helen Morrison. I'm 70 years old. And this is the story of how I stopped being invisible. Not because my children suddenly decided I was worthy, but because I finally did. And I chose to fight for the space I should have had all along.